Darcy is an internationally known speaker. She's a bereaved parent and editor of Grief Digest, which is a great resource for everybody. She's a grief management specialist. She's a certified thanatologist and president and founder of Grief Incorporated and a licensed psychotherapist. And she's written a lot of great books. Darcy, where do we find you on the net? How do people find all this great stuff you've been doing?
Well, actually, all you have to do is Google me, and I come up. But you can find me at www.grief.com, griefinc.com.
And you know, one of the things that Heidi and I are very excited about is that you actually wrote a poem for this webinar. Isn't that amazing, Heidi?
Absolutely. I mean, I looked at this poem and just thought that it was something she had in a book that had been edited over and over. And she said, no, Heidi, it just came to me as I was doing this webinar. And I'm like, wow, it is such a powerful poem.
I did. Well, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to think of some things, and I have a very good computer. Words just show up. I click them and say, oh, those are mine. So I was really pleased, but it became, excuse me, I have a cold. It became the question that I had to wrestle with the first Mother's Day after our son died. And I know that many of us are wrestling with that question, whether it's your first Mother's Day or your 30th Mother's Day. You're just not quite sure if you are still a mother. So can I read it to you?
Yeah, do.
We'd love you to.
Okay, cool. Am I still a mother? Am I still a mother if there's no child to tuck in at night, if there are no socks to pick up or laundry to do, if there's no homework to be checked or science projects to complete? Am I still a mother? If there are no more dresses to hem or jeans to wash, if there is no light to be left on or curfew to be met or beds to be made or songs to be sung or cookies to be baked, am I still a mother? If there's no wedding to plan or grandbabies to rock, if there are no more memories to be earned or moments to catch, am I still a mother? Yes, I am still a mother as long as I can breathe and remember, and even when I can no longer do either one, I shall forever be your mom.
Wow. That is so touching, and that is a big question we're asking around Mother's Day. You know, am I still a mom, particularly for those? And if, you know, you don't have any children, am I still a mother? And if you have kids, am I still the mother of that child? Really tough issues.
And for you and Darcy, am I still the mother of a son? You both lost your only son. So, I mean, there's so many identity shifts. Who are we after the death of a child?
Absolutely. And I had a good friend many years ago who had her only child die. And we were talking about Mother's Day. And she said the first Mother's Day after her son died, her mother sent her a Mother's Day card. And she said, I knew what it was before I opened it. And I just ripped open the envelope, tore up the card, and sent my mother back the pieces of the card and said, don't ever do that again. I'm no longer a mother. And she said, what do you think, Darcy? And I, you know, you hate to disagree with someone. And I went, I'm still a mom. I'm not ever going to stop being a mother. But I can understand where you might have a different thought process. And maybe we both can figure out how to survive this day, even though we look at it very differently. It took her a long time before she decided it was okay that I still felt I was a mother.
Right. Well, how about giving us some of those survival tips that will help us deal with this?
Absolutely. And these are survival tips for any of us at any time. But I think one of them is simply, and they sound easy, but they're not easy to do. One is to become aware of your feelings and then to acknowledge them. I think we go through the day just not feeling good. And someone will say, how are you? Well, the standard answer is, oh, I'm fine, without even thinking about what it means. But figure out what you are. Are you sad today? Is it anger that you're feeling? Is it loneliness? Is it depression? Are you afraid today? Once we can get accurate in what we feel, then we might have some other ways to deal with them. And then simply say, you know what, I am sad today, or I'm lonely today, or I'm confused today. I don't know whether I should be a mother. I don't know whether I shouldn't be. You know, we all have a mother. We aren't all a mother, but we all had one. So there are these expectations of what we should do, of who we should be, and are we meeting those? And maybe the feeling you're having today is disappointment or confusion, or grief is so big, to say I'm grieving isn't enough. Specifically, what are you feeling today?
Right. Well, you know, being gentle with yourself. I think we've got a question here, a thought about that. And also, if our audience wants to write some questions for us, they can. But we have Sue here who says, I can't forgive myself. How can I do that when my 2-year-old was sick? I knew he was sick and I didn't take him to the doctor. Wow. So, how can I be gentle with myself this Mother's Day?
Wow. Well, that is a hard one because we're all going to lay in bed at night and think of the if-onlys and I could have and I should have. The hard part in life is that we don't have a crystal ball. If we'd had a crystal ball, if we'd known how something was going to end, you bet we would have acted differently. If you'd known he was that sick or that something awful was going to happen, you would have done everything in your power. So sometimes the only thing we can do in being gentle with ourselves is simply say, I did the best I could with the knowledge I had at the time. Hindsight is very powerful, but it's also very painful when we say, well, if I'd gotten him to the doctor on time, then this wouldn't have happened. Or if I hadn't taken that turn in the road, then this wouldn't have happened. But we didn't know ahead of time. We aren't magicians. We can't read people's minds, and we don't know the future. So sometimes it's just saying, I did what I could at the time. I'm not a horrible, wicked person. I'm a grieving person. And to be kind to yourself.
I think sometimes we're so numbed out, particularly early on, that kind of being angry at ourselves at least makes us feel.
Well, and it's easier, remember, to be angry than to hurt so much. Anger is a very powerful block for grief. So it's easier for me to be angry than for me to be sad. I know what to do when I'm angry, but I don't know what to do when I'm sad. So that anger part, we can keep going for a very long time, and anger and guilt sit on the same sides of the teeter-totter. So I'm angry because I'm guilty because I'm angry. What kind of a mother am I? You know what? You're a good, kind, loving mother who's hurting terribly because our child is no longer within hug's reach.
Absolutely. Well, moving on to some survival tips on finding supports. I think that's interesting about finding a support system and compassionate listeners. Heidi and I like to call them safe people.
Absolutely. And sometimes we think we're surrounded by compassionate people because we thought we were, and then our child dies, and all of a sudden we discover that our child died, but we lost friends. They're so afraid, and I think they're afraid that what happened to us might happen to them, or they're very afraid that they don't know what to say. Most people will say, just tell me 5 things I can say to a grieving person, Darcy. And I said, okay, hello would be one, and I love you is another one, and I'm here for you is another one. But what are you asking? Well, we don't want to make them hurt anymore. I said, you can't make me hurt any less. So do anything to help that grieving person, knowing that your presence is the most important thing. So we have to go out and find people who are safe. Find people who won't say to us, oh, I understand. I don't understand. I can't even understand anyone else's grief. I can barely figure out my own. But I can say, tell me about it, and then not turn away when someone starts to talk.
Right.
We need those support systems who will simply, it's very complex, to listen to us without judgment, without criticism, just to receive our story. Because we're telling our story. I think people say, why do bereaved people talk so much about the death? And we do in the beginning because we're trying to make sense of it. It's like a scattered puzzle all over the table. And the more we tell our story, the more puzzle pieces we turn over. And eventually we try to, it's our way of making it real.
And also, it's hard with Mother's Day. People want us to be happy, during this holiday and that kind of thing, and trying to find supports where you can do a different thing on Mother's Day, where maybe you're going to get together with some people and talk about some memories or whatever.
Absolutely. Or you're going out to the cemetery and sit on the grave and talk for a few minutes. Non-bereaved people think that's absolutely crazy. Us bereaved people say, yeah, that's okay. Take a picnic lunch with you. Whatever makes sense to you. Whatever makes sense to you. The flip side of all this
is the sibling perspective, and I just want to kind of chime in with that and say that while there are awesome, wonderful ideas that people should definitely be able to do, sometimes when we have surviving children, we also need to allow them to have a Mother's Day, and they want to celebrate with us in different ways. So maybe we can, pay tribute to those children that we still have that we've lost, and then pay tribute to the children that we have that are still here as well.
Absolutely.
The kids kind of want to celebrate those days.
Absolutely.
Right?
You do not want to forget your living children. If you are lucky enough to have subsequent or surviving children, we do not want to forget them. You never want death to take precedence over life. And we can celebrate as a family. Remember, you don't stop loving someone just because they died. That child is still a member of your family, but they're not the only member of your family. So you might ask the brothers and sisters, how would you like to celebrate? How can we do this as a family instead of just having mom go off by herself? Or maybe she does go do something by herself and then comes back to have the family dinner. And if it's Mother's Day, hopefully mother is not cooking the family dinner.
I think one thing that's important on Mother's Day, too, is to let people know that if you have to leave for a few minutes and then come back and pull it together, they don't need to come and find you.
Absolutely, unless they see you driving away in the car at 100 miles an hour.
Right.
And then they might want to catch you on the cell phone and say, you're going to the store because you forgot something, right? And just to be kind and compassionate to each other, and know that every one of us in a family, if there's a dad still in the picture, dad's going to have some issues and some difficulties. If there are brothers and sisters, grandmas and grandpas, everyone is affected by the death of that child. But we didn't lose them. That child died, and that love that we have is still there. And I want to capitalize on that, especially on days like Mother's Day and Father's Day. In fact, every day, I want to capitalize on the fact that we have that love. It didn't go away.
And I've heard you say before, people feel so badly because their child died without them being able to say something. And I heard you say, yeah, what did you want to say? If you wanted to say, well, why don't you continue with that for Darcy, because you have such a great thought on that.
Well, I think so many people, as a therapist, I would sit and listen to people say, I didn't get to say, and then they have a long list of what they didn't get to say. And, of course, the number one thing for many of families is I didn't get to say goodbye. And I thought, well, and I've listened to that for years. I was very, very lucky. I did get to say goodbye to Big A. He died in my arms, and I knew he was dying. But I refused to let that be the closing conversation. Even when someone came to me and said, it's looking not so good, you might want to say goodbye to him now. And I literally threw that person out of the room and said, I'm not through saying hello. And I would never waste my last breath or his last breath with the word goodbye. And so I will talk to people. I'll say, one, you can say whatever you want to them now. I believe they'll still hear us. You can write them a letter. You can send them a balloon. You can stand out in the parking lot and yell it at them or whisper it in a dream. But why would you ever waste the last breath of someone's life saying goodbye? I want them to say, I love you. Those were the last words I said to my son, and I say them every day. I love you. I still do. And that's not changing. I don't care how old I get to be. That's not going to change. So you can say whatever you need to, but don't waste any more guilt on I didn't get to say goodbye.
I like that. So somebody said that their TCF group's going to have a Mother's Day brunch. How can we make this helpful to us?
Oh, what a fabulous idea. What a fabulous idea. I think one of the greatest things that we could do is, instead of coming prepared with a death story, come prepared with a life story. This is a day to celebrate being a mother. It's a day to celebrate having a child. So rather than talk about what we have no longer within the hug's reach, we are always within the heart reach. Share a wonderful memory. Have everyone write a memory on a piece of paper, wrap it up in a box, open it as a present, put it on a piece of paper in a basket and pull them out and read them, so that we can begin to share the life and the joy. Whether your child never ever took a breath, if you just had a child as in pregnancy, you had hopes and dreams for that child, or your child was 45 years old and you had 45 years worth of hopes and memories, Those are the things to pull out on Sunday and to celebrate. Those are the things to bring a bouquet of flowers for. Those are the things to cut a piece of cake and say, yes, I am a mother, and I am so incredibly grateful that this child walked into my life.
Mm-hmm. And a brunch, Darcy, I'm thinking maybe they could bring their child's favorite dish too.
Oh, absolutely. And if not, of course, I'm a dessert fan. I'm a dessert fan, so bring their favorite dessert.
Yeah, I love all this because, yeah, I think this is such an important point, because the way that my brother and all the people that are listening, children died, is a moment, it's a second in time. And we have so many memories about the way they lived that we want to celebrate and talk about and pay tribute to. The way that they died is not who they were.
Absolutely. And when you bring their favorite cookie, or you bring Jell-O, and somebody says, Jell-O, I said, oh yeah, my kid loved Jell-O. Hey, there's a story with that. There's a life story with that. And when you share that, when you bring that out, for a moment, grief recedes. Doesn't mean we're going to get over it. Doesn't mean it's going to end magically that day. But it's going to recede as a memory of life takes its place. And that's how we're going to move through. You know, it says survival tips up there, but I'm really looking for living tips. You survived the moment you took the first breath after your child died. I'm after more than survival. I want to live again. I want the joy back. I miss joy and laughter more than anything else, and I had to go find it again.
You know,
and we found it. You know, we found it when we started to remember the life.
I like your second thing about skip the self-judgment and let the judgment of others pass through you without damage, because there's some really mean judgment out there about, you know, especially on suicide, or, you know, where somebody was careless, or people want to find reasons because they don't want it to happen to them, I guess. I don't know. There's some really nasty judgment that goes on.
There's also judgment around time, how long it takes to grieve and how long it should take. People have they're very critical, especially if they haven't been there.
Absolutely, and they want us to be over it immediately. So if you can become, I like to think of myself as being transparent. And I am, you know, my mother always said, kill people with kindness. So I learned early on, when people said something to me that I didn't find particularly charming or helpful, to simply breathe through it, let it wash through me and go right out the back. And why spend energy holding on to something that added to my pain? I know it was because they were unaware. I don't think most people lay in bed at night thinking about how I hurt somebody. Some do, but I don't think most do. They weren't aware of the pain it was going to cause. So I decided I wasn't going to let it cause any more pain than it did. Transitory. It hurt me. I let it go. And I looked at them and I said, I really appreciate your thinking of me. And that's all I would say. And some of them got it and some of them didn't. And it wasn't a snotty remark. It was because I was grateful, to be honest with you, that anybody was talking to me, because most people decided silence was the way to go.
Right.
And silence hurts more than anything else.
Yeah. The last one on forgive yourself or whatever you believe in, we've got another question, a comment from Lillian, where she says, what do you say to the grieving parent who finds it hard to forgive themselves after the death of their child?
Oh, Lillian, I wish we had a magic wand that we could wave and guilt would just go away. I just continue to talk to them about find the good memories and to be kind and compassionate to yourself. I think we have to wrestle with the stuff we didn't do right, or that we did do or we didn't do. Some of us left with a negative conversation. Maybe the last words you had with your child were ugly and mean, because at the moment we both felt ugly and mean. But love overcomes that. Love can stretch around those words because we know it was a moment of anger, and that moment of anger is going to cancel a lifetime of love. I don't think so. But I can't push people in their grief. I have to receive them where they are and simply say, I hope you will find at some point the joy of your child's life. Right now you're living in a hurt. I hope you'll find the joy.
Yeah, here we've got a sibling question that is involved with anger too. I lost my 13-week-old daughter 2 months ago. I find myself being angry at my 5-year-old boy because he is still here. Is that normal?
Yes, It's still normal. It is normal. Anything that you do in grief is going to have a normalcy about it. It's very painful. And we need to understand we're not really angry at the 5-year-old. We're angry at the circumstances, what has happened. We're angry at life. We're angry at God or Spirit. We're angry at ourselves. We're angry at the world right now. And if you can temper that with a little bit of compassion and patience for your 5-year-old is also desperate for attention and love from you. They may not understand what has happened, but they get the feelings. They may not understand the why of the atmosphere in the house, or that mommy is sad or angry, but they understand that. And they may demand more attention of you right now at a time when you don't feel like you have it. Try some patience, back off a little bit and say, wow, that's grief talking right now. And grab him and hug him and say, I'm so glad you're here. I am so glad you're here. I'm glad I'm your mommy. And then see what he says. But let him comfort you too.
You know, 13-week-old daughter, 2 months ago, you know, she is still recovering from, you know, having a baby. And my thought is, you know, you also might ask people to help you so that with your 5-year-old, you're spending quality time with him. Let other people do the tasks and call for some help.
Absolutely. You're still physically recovering. You're still probably frozen in grief, and yet your body is still recovering from having had a baby. And you just need, this is a time when you really do need to be compassionate towards yourself and to make sure that someone is there to help you when you get overwhelmed, and so that you don't spend that being overwhelmed and that exhaustion by being angry at your child and at anyone else who's around you who's trying to help. They're trying to help. They can't bring your child back, but they can help you move forward into this.
And I'm just thinking also that, you know, since 5-year-olds often don't have the language and verbal that older kids have, they often act out after a loss. And so this little boy might be very high maintenance right now. And as you said, Darcy, at a time when this mom is grieving, and I think you said that too, Mom, he may be bouncing off the walls and being a pain in the neck, and that's normal. That's what grief looks like oftentimes in 5-year-olds. So I'm with you, both of you, getting help, getting support so that you can take time for yourself to grieve.
And not feeling that you're a bad mother. You're a perfectly appropriate mother who's hurting terribly and who needs a little bit of support to move through that.
Absolutely. Well, what about making lists?
Well, this was designed for those of us who found that we had, our child died, but we lost our mind. And grief just takes over. I couldn't remember anything. And I know people talk to me because I'd see their mouths moving, but I had no idea what they were saying. And I finally started to make lists of tasks, simple things like get up, brush your teeth, go get the mail. Simple things that you think, what's the matter with me? But my mind was clouded with grief, and I couldn't make head nor tails of it. And I was making my own life more crazy because I couldn't remember anything. Once I started to make lists, then I was okay. And then, of course, I had to learn where I put the list because I kept losing the list. So I had a really good friend who gave me a refrigerator magnet who said, stick the list on the refrigerator. You pass that thing several times a day, check the list. And I've never changed that. And my family knows if they're not on my list, they don't exist. So if they want me to do something, they come write it on my list, and I don't have to waste energy worrying about trying to remember things.
That's good.
Grief just overwhelms us. So it's easy. Make it as simple as you can for yourself.
Yep. And so have you got any more thoughts in this survival tips specifically about this day we call Mother's Day?
You know, I'd like us to change a few things. The biggest thing has changed. So do something differently than you've ever done before, no matter what that is. Whether it's eat at a different place, whether it's do something special that you've never done before, or maybe Mother's Day has always been one of those days where you quick go to church, you quick go have dinner out, and it's frantic, frantic, frantic. So maybe we change it and we slow down a little bit. But what I want most of all is for people to find a reason to be thankful, to find a reason to celebrate this day. Even if that child is no longer within hug's reach, that child came to us and gave us the most wonderful gift of unconditional love. Find a way to celebrate that. whether that's sending off a balloon or having a special mass said or taking flowers to a neighbor or just sitting in the sun for a few minutes and enjoying that and saying, you know what, for a moment I held a miracle in my hands and I am forever blessed because of that.
I love that. That's wonderful. So I know your next tip is to concentrate on your child's life and not on the death, and that certainly is important. And the idea of being thankful for something is pretty amazing. Here's another question we've got. After 4 years, I'm still crying about my son every other day. Sometimes I feel like I'm not normal. Gosh, she's gotten to every other day. Good for her.
I was going to say, I'm thinking every other day is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's not bad.
That's not bad. You know, now, is it all day, every other day, or are we looking at, 23 hours out of the 24? I sometimes think we don't see the progress we're making because we think and we bought the myth that you're supposed to be over it by now. But everybody has their own time frame, their own time clocks. So be compassionate with yourself. Do whatever makes sense to you, as long as it doesn't lead you to tall buildings, sharp instruments, or heavy drugs. And if it's leading you there, then go get some additional support for yourself. You don't have to do this alone. But if you're crying and you're doing it, okay, toilet paper works, tissues work, tablecloth works. Be compassionate to yourself and celebrate that you got it down to every other day.
There's a real paradox in grief and loss, and you were talking about the freeze earlier, and I think we're frozen, and as we start to thaw, we start getting more emotional, and it's a paradox because we're getting better, but we're feeling worse because we can feel again.
Well, I think that's true. We start out frozen with no feelings at all. You function, but there are no feelings. And then as you begin to thaw and defrost, the feelings come back. And if it's been a couple of months that you've been frozen, or even a year or two that you have been in that frozen state, when you start to thaw, then it starts to hurt. And you're going, uh-oh, how come it's getting worse? The farther I get from the death, the worse it gets for a time. And it's simply because you are defrosting, all those feelings are coming, and unfortunately about that time is when all the support systems are withdrawn because they think, oh, well, you're over that. So it makes perfect sense that for a time it's going to get more difficult. If it continues to become so difficult that you're no longer even doing the daily activities of living, that's a time to go reach out and say to somebody, wow, I could use a little more support here. This is getting harder than even I thought it would. And check it out with other bereaved parents. One of the nicest things is to be able to talk to someone else who's on a similar path, and you begin to discover that you're not the only one walking in this particular part of the woods.
And Jennifer wants to know, is it normal to focus on the death day instead of focusing on the good memories?
Is it normal? Well, there's a strange question. Is it normal? It's a natural thing to do, and especially in the beginning. Now, people would like you very much to move quickly to remembering the life. In fact, sometimes funeral services don't even give us a moment to grieve. We're supposed to have a celebration, which is a great idea, but I also need time to grieve. So it's your comfort zone. Eventually, I would like you to make the choice to think more about the life than the death, but that's going to be your time frame. And I think eventually you will grow weary of only remembering the death. I remember when I did, someone had asked me a story about what had happened, and I was in the middle of telling them, and all of a sudden I just looked at this lady and I said, you know what, I want to tell you my son's eyes are blue. And she looked at me and she said, what? I said, I don't want to tell you about the death anymore. I want to tell you about the time he did this. And she smiled and I smiled, and later I thought, wow, I just made a choice. I made a choice to remember a life moment first. And I can't tell you how long it took. I'm going to tell you it was at least a year before I could do that. And the first time I did it, I thought, oh, my God, that means I'm forgetting him. And then I thought, you couldn't forget love if you tried. It just means I'm embracing all of his life, not just the death.
I love it. So what about planning a special moment of memorial? Are you thinking about that at Mother's Day, that they could plan something?
Sure. Anytime. Any day is a good day when you remember the life. But Mother's Day is a special day, so have a tribute. Maybe you make a toast at lunch Maybe you send flowers to the altar. Maybe you simply, my mom always planted flowers on Mother's Day. And I missed my last Mother's Day. She died in April. I bought her a beautiful card, Gloria. I bought her the most beautiful card. And I'm so stupid. I waited till Mother's Day. She died 2 weeks before Mother's Day. And I found that card in my dresser, and I sobbed. I said, what an idiot. I could have given it to her 2 weeks ago, but no, I had to wait till the right day. So I had to go out to the cemetery and give my mother the Mother's Day card. And I decided that day I would always make any day I saw somebody I loved a special day. So you don't have to wait till Mother's Day to make a special moment.
You know, I was just thinking when you were saying that, you know, we have our kids write letters to Santa Claus and all that.
Yeah.
And, you know, why not write letters to people that we've lost about how we feel about life and send cards and whatever.
Absolutely. And you don't, you know,
you can even mail them.
You can mail them, you can send them out, and you can sit in quietly and think it. You can send it out into the universe. I truly believe any message of love gets where it's going. So you don't have to wait, but make a special moment to stop on Mother's Day and say thanks to your children, because without them, we would not be mothers.
Absolutely. Well,
So thanks to your kids.
Stuff that you could do as a family, like you said before earlier, Darcy, like doing a balloon launch with your kids, or all getting bubbles and everybody blowing bubbles together. You know,
do bubbles, yes.
Yeah, they're so fun. I mean, there's so many things you can do as a family, paying tribute to your child as well.
Absolutely, and that way include your living children and say, okay, we're going to do something special today to celebrate our family. What would you like to do? And have them involved too, so that it isn't just you picking something. And in our family, we always go, I won't tell you where we go, we always go to have special ice cream, the really expensive stuff. And that's a once a year, and that's because on Mother's Day I get to choose. And I said, you know what, as a family, I choose this. Now, there are 4 of us. One is no longer here. We buy 4 ice cream cones, and we all split the last one.
Ah, sweet. I like that.
That is a great idea.
I mean, absolutely.
We've got another question here. I recently found out that I'm pregnant with the passing of my daughter. I am happy and sad. Any suggestions?
To be happy and sad, just to literally acknowledge where you are every day, counter every sad moment, balance it with a good moment, because you also want this new child to be born into a world of love, not fear, into a world of joy, not anger or sadness. So to welcome this new child not as a replacement, but as another addition to a heart that can continue to expand. And when that child grows up, make sure they know about their brother or sister, not as a ghost, but as a living, loving human being.
You know, I think that kind of hits on the last point in this slide, too, about discover the person you are now, because she is a pregnant woman, and she's producing another child, and who are you now? You know?
Absolutely. And you will be afraid, and you will be nervous. You were afraid and nervous for the first baby. You're going to be for this one as well. But honor that, not push it away. And if it really gets to be too difficult, find someone to talk with about this and say, I just need a little extra support today. You know, I'm a pregnant lady and I'm crazy. All pregnant people are, all pregnant women are crazy. And I'm a little crazier, but forgive me today.
I love it. Well, as we move on to the next slide, I want to give you another question that we've got here. Linda wants to know, how do I enter my son's room? It's been 5 weeks.
Well, you have to open the door, and then you have to put one foot in. No, I'm serious. And then you have to put one foot in front of the other. And don't enter it as a shrine. Don't enter it as a place, especially if he died there. Don't enter it in that place. Just say, I'm going to go in to my son's room. He's still your son, and it's still his room until you make it into something else. Maybe all you can do the first day is open the door, but there's no time frame here. Maybe you can go in and sit on the bed or sit in a chair or a rocking chair. Maybe you can't. Take your time. There are no time frames here unless the wrecking ball is coming or you have to get out of the house because it's on fire or you've sold it. then there are some time frames. Otherwise, take your time, do what you need to do. If you're going in to pack up things, take your time. And you might want to have a special friend with you as you pack, but don't let anybody else pack it up for you.
Well, that was going to be my question to you, Darcy. Why does she need to go into the room at 5 weeks unless she wants to?
Unless she wants to. She doesn't
and
have
like you're
to.
saying, she doesn't. She needs to take her time. If she wants to, she can. But if she doesn't want to, maybe she can wait also.
Right. Unless someone has said, gosh, you got to get rid of everything. And then that's one of those hurtful remarks that you let simply go through you. You become transparent to it and say, I really appreciate your suggestion. Thank you so much. But I need to do this in my time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So get rid of the oughts and the shoulds. There's a wonderful expression that I love, and when you look at people and say very kindly, please don't should on me.
Mm-hmm.
And look in the mirror and say the same thing. Don't should on yourself.
So we've got another question here. I'm a single mother. My only son is gone, and I'm not looking forward to Mother's Day. Well, who would?
Probably not looking forward to Mother's Day, but you will have to ask your own question, am I still a mother? Now, as I told you, I had a friend who decided she was not, and the rest of us decide, yes, I am. Once you've answered that question, that will tell you how you're going to spend the day. If you decide you're not a mother anymore and you don't want to celebrate Mother's Day, then make sure that you don't go to a restaurant that's having a Mother's Day special for meals. You might want to maybe not go out that day. Do something that makes sense to you, that comforts you.
Go to a movie, whatever.
Absolutely. Go to a movie, go for a walk, weed the garden. If you still find yourself being a mother, then find some friends to be with that day. Maybe a couple of you go out to dinner together, or go for a walk or go for a movie. Just do something to treat yourself.
And if she doesn't know about it, Kay Brabington's Alive Alone organization, you can find it on the internet.
Absolutely.
And you can connect up with other parents with no living children and discuss it with them.
Absolutely. You know? And I think almost everybody discovers that there was joy in the moment, and don't forget those moments.
Mm-hmm. And another question we have is, I'm too angry to celebrate Mother's Day, but I have another child, which is what you were talking about earlier, Heidi. Yeah.
Absolutely. That child, if they're old enough, is going to bring you a card or a sticky piece of paper with their handprint on it or something. And I want you to be able to take a really deep breath and receive it and say thank you. You may have to then walk away and go outside for a minute and be angry, but don't push that child away who's coming to you and saying, but you're still my mommy too. And that's the greatest sound we will ever hear, is when somebody says, you're my mommy. So don't push that away.
I still need you. Yes,
right.
This is one of the biggest issues I hear, and I'm sure, Allie does too when we're running sibling groups, is my parents are saying, sometimes they say, life is no longer worth living, or I'm in so much pain it's hard to get up, and that's understandable because you've lost children. However, think about, like you said, if that child comes up to you and gives you a card or et cetera, I know it's difficult, but they still really need you in their lives.
Absolutely. And even if you hug them and burst into tears and they say, oh, Mommy, why are you crying? And say, I'm crying because I'm happy and sad at the same time. Isn't that kind of silly? But we also need to remember that our other children are grieving, because it's their brother, it's their sister who's no longer there, and I don't want them to become invisible to us. So even in our greatest pain, we need to reach to each other. That's what that family circle is all about. The family circle gets broken, but we mend it with love.
Okay, given that, I'm going to combine two questions here, and we can move on to the next slide while I do that. One says, my younger son is so angry he won't talk, and then another one says it's different, but I think it's connected. My son wants his brother's room.
Oh, well, you're always going to have sibling rivalry, and you're always going to have children whose grief gets stuck inside them, just like you have grown-ups with grief gets stuck inside them. And sometimes, especially in younger children, and in grown-ups too, let's just say we're all kids inside of us, that grief gets turned into anger sometimes. Anger is frustration. Anger is helplessness, and it comes out in mean words and in behavior and hitting and kicking. But if you can try to think, where's the helplessness here? Where's the hurt? Anger is a great mask for hurt. And if you could deal with the hurt rather than the anger, and sometimes it's hard to hug a porcupine, but to hug that child and sometimes say, I hurt too, or I miss your brother too. And wow, you will see a complete change right there. It's like, whoa, how did you know? Because sometimes kids don't know the difference between anger and grief and hurt. Sometimes we don't know. So take a chance. And for the child who wants their brother's room,
Yeah.
you might have to say, can you give me a couple of days? Can you give me a couple of weeks? And then let's talk about it.
Right, whatever time you need.
Also, I want to do a little reframe on wanting your brother's room. We all wanted my brother's room, and we wanted my brother's room because that was the place to be closest to him. That's where he laid his head every night and slept. That's where we went when we wanted to feel him in so many ways. And did I tell my parents this? No. I didn't tell my parents that's why we wanted his room. Heather and Rebecca didn't tell my parents because they were grieving, and we didn't want to cause them any more pain. We just told them we wanted his room, but we didn't tell them why.
What a great thought. I don't think parents even would think of that. So if you can talk to your parents, and sometimes we don't talk to each other, so write a note. Leave a message on the mirror written in lipstick. Write a note and leave it on somebody's pillow. Leave a text message. Send an email. Sometimes we can't talk face-to-face, but don't stop communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
then we are lost to each other. And maybe you leave the room for a while, and everybody can go in at certain times. If you're going to dismantle the room, make sure that the people who are in the family have the ability to come and to select something of that child that will be just for them. Either they take it to their room, maybe they want to wear it. We've had lots of people wear a sweatshirt, or they want one of the bowling trophies, or I want the football. And you say, oh, no, no. And you say, well, wait a minute. I loved him too. And when I hold his football or when I wear his leather jacket or his sweater, I feel close to that person. Those are special things. That's a way to honor your loved one and keep our child in our family. They still hold a place in the family.
You know, Heidi said something. I want to go back to something earlier. Heidi always says that one of the great things to say to people, for a mother to be able to say, is, I have lost a child, but I've never lost a sibling. Tell me about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know,
tell me what it's like.
acknowledging that they're both. Well, we've got a couple more questions, and maybe we can go on to the next slide and see Darcy and me together. But do you want to comment on this one first, Darcy? May your love.
May love be what you remember the most. This is what I want engraved. If you ever walk through a cemetery and you see this, you'll know you're looking at my headstone. These are the words that I live by. There are so many things to remember, and I want to remember them all. I have to claim every moment of our son's life, even the horrible moments, because they were part of his life. But if I had to choose one to remember, it's the love moments that I will keep in my memory forever and ever and ever.
I love that. Well, let's move on to the next slide, and I've got two more questions, and then we'll...
oh, there we are.
There we are.
You know why I love that, Darcy and Gloria? I'm not a bereaved mother. I have had 2 miscarriages, though. But I love that because you two are both smiling, and you both have joy, and you both have found hope despite the ultimate loss of your sons.
Absolutely.
We did. You just need to remember that picture wasn't taken 5 minutes after our sons died.
It's true. This is very, very true. So down the road, it is possible.
Right.
There
Not
is
initially,
hope.
but down the road.
Absolutely. There is hope if you will allow it, if you will allow yourself to begin to heal and not have to hang on to the grief forever and ever. I think a lot of people think that's all they have left is the grief. And, you know, there is so much more to our memories than the memories of grief.
Absolutely, and that kind of fits into our last question. Well, we've got one more. I'll do this one first, then I'll do the last one. Would all these tips apply to Father's Day? We probably got a man out there. Hey.
No, not at all. No, it doesn't apply at all. Men don't grieve, so, no, they can't listen. Of course it does. It applies to all of us. And I tell you what, the trouble with Dad's Day is most people don't think dads think or feel because they don't speak often about it. But absolutely, every one of these tips is good for dads and for Grandparents' Day and Siblings' Day and for anyone who's grieving the death of someone they love.
Absolutely.
And to that person that just wrote in, that dad, we are going to do another webinar, in June, Mom, about men and grief.
Yeah, Father's Day, yeah. So watch for that. We'll send it out to you.
Yes.
Well, here's the last question we'll be able to take now, and I think it fits into what we're talking about, is that you have to give yourself permission to be happy, like Darcy and I are again. And this woman's, or I assume it's a woman, it doesn't have a name on it. I feel guilty when we do things as a family because my daughter is gone.
Only gone from your arm's reach, always within the reach and the circle of your heart. The first time we had a good moment, we all felt terribly guilty. The first time we laughed, I thought, oh my gosh, we have forgotten our son. And the more we laughed, the more we realized that that was a tribute to the joy that he brought to our lives. This is not a legacy of loss here. This is not a legacy of sadness that we carry. This is a legacy of life and of joy. You gave them life, and they gave you joy. Find that one again. You cannot do anything less.
Oh, Darcy, thank you so much for that message and for being on the show today. You're an amazing person, amazing guest, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in July.
Thank you guys so much, and take care, and may love be what you all remember the most.
Thanks, Darcy.
All right. Take care.
I want to remind everybody that this show will be, if you've enjoyed it, you may want to tell your friends about it. It will be archived on the Open to Hope website. Heather tells us she'll have it archived by Thursday. Also, you can email us at Open to Hope if you would like to get a handout of this webinar. I know I'm using it in my Compassionate Friends meeting in the next couple of weeks. And good luck to you all on the Mother's Day holiday, and may you be safe and find the things that you're looking for in your life. Thank you for listening.